The dust cloud behind the stagecoach rose like a signal fire against the Arizona sky, and Nathan Xavier knew trouble was riding straight toward his ranch before the horses even came into view. He stood on the porch of his sprawling cattle operation just outside Vulture City, Arizona Territory, in the spring of 1883, squinting against the afternoon sun as the coach barreled down the dirt road with unusual urgency. Most folks traveled at a leisurely pace in this heat, but whoever was driving those horses seemed desperate to outrun something or someone. Nathan was 30 years old, tall and lean from years of ranch work, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that curled slightly at his collar. He had sent away for a mail-order bride 3 months ago, exchanging letters with a woman named Sarah Grayson from Missouri, who claimed to be a school teacher looking for a fresh start out west. Her letters had been proper and polite, filled with details about her love of reading and her desire for a quiet life. He had been lonely since his father passed 2 years prior, leaving him the ranch and nothing but cattle and hired hands for company. The stagecoach pulled up in front of his house, and the driver jumped down with a nervous energy that set Nathan on edge. "You Nathan Xavier?" "I am." "Got your bride here. Need to get going. There's another coach coming up behind us, and you might want to get her inside quick." Nathan's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean another coach?" But the driver was already pulling luggage from the back and practically shoving a woman toward Nathan. She wore a dusty green traveling dress that had seen better days, and her dark blonde hair was half falling from its pins. When she looked up at him, he found himself staring into the most striking pair of green eyes he had ever seen. There was intelligence there and fear, and something wild that made his heart beat faster for reasons he could not quite name. "Sarah Grayson?" he asked. "Yes." "Please, we need to get inside." The driver tossed the last bag onto the porch and climbed back onto his seat. "Good luck, Xavier. You are going to need it." He snapped the reins and the horses took off at the same breakneck speed they had arrived with. Nathan picked up her bags, studying her face. She was beautiful in an unconventional way, with high cheekbones and a determined set to her jaw, but there was something off about the whole situation. What did he mean by that? Could we please go inside? Her voice was low and urgent, and she kept glancing back at the road. He gestured toward the door and followed her in, setting her bags down in the front room. The house was well appointed for a ranch, with real wood floors and furniture his mother had picked out before she died. Sarah moved to the window immediately, peering out through the curtains. "Are you going to tell me what is going on?" Nathan asked, his patience wearing thin. She turned to face him and he saw her swallow hard. "There are men following me. Bounty hunters, most likely. Bounty hunters." He let the words hang in the air between them. "And why would bounty hunters be following a schoolteacher from Missouri?" "Because I am not exactly a schoolteacher." She lifted her chin defiantly. "Well, I was for a time, but circumstances changed." Nathan felt his stomach drop. "What circumstances?" Before she could answer, the sound of hoofbeats filled the air. 3 riders appeared on the road, dust billowing behind them. They slowed as they approached the ranch, and Nathan could see the sun glinting off the rifles they carried across their saddles. "Stay here," he commanded and walked back out onto the porch. The 3 men pulled up in front of the house. The leader was a barrel-chested man with a thick beard and small, mean eyes. "Afternoon. We are looking for a woman. Goes by Sarah Grayson, though that probably is not her real name." "You seen anyone matching that description?" Nathan crossed his arms. "What is your business with her? She is wanted. There is a reward." The man reached into his saddlebag and pulled out a folded paper. He tossed it toward the porch and it landed at Nathan's feet. Nathan picked it up and unfolded it slowly. It was a wanted poster, and the face sketched on it was unmistakably Sarah, though her hair was shorter in the drawing. The name on the poster read Scarlett Grayson, alias Sarah Grayson, alias Sally Green. Below that, in bold letters, wanted for robbery. Reward $500, wanted alive. His eyes fixed on those last two words, alive. That meant something. He looked back up at the three men, then at the poster again, then back at the men. His mind raced through possibilities, through the implications of what he was about to do. "I have not seen anyone matching this description," he said, meeting the leader's eyes steadily. The bearded man leaned forward in his saddle. "You sure about that?" "We tracked her stagecoach right to this road. Driver said he dropped someone off here." "Driver dropped off my mail-order bride. Woman named Sarah Grayson from Missouri. She is a school teacher. I have her letters to prove it. Mind if we search your property?" "I mind very much." "This is private land, and unless you have a warrant from a territorial marshal, you will be moving along now." The three men exchanged glances. The leader spat tobacco juice into the dust. "We will be back. If we find out you are harboring a criminal, you will be in as much trouble as she is." "I will take my chances. Now get off my land." They turned their horses and rode back toward the main road, but Nathan knew they would not go far. They would set up camp somewhere nearby and watch. He waited until they were out of sight before going back inside. Sarah stood in the middle of the front room, her face pale. "You lied for me." "Why?" Nathan held up the wanted poster. "Your wanted poster says alive. That means whatever you did, they want you to stand trial. Which means you deserve to tell your side of the story before I hand you over to those vultures." She studied his face, and he could see her trying to decide how much to trust him. Finally, she sighed and sank into one of the chairs. "My real name is Scarlett Grayson." "Scarlett is my middle name, Sarah is my first. I did not lie about that much, at least. And I was a school teacher in a small town in Missouri called Harmony." "What happened?" "There was a bank robbery. 3 men came in during the middle of the day and held everyone hostage. I was there depositing my wages." She twisted her hands in her lap. "One of the robbers was my brother Thomas. I had not seen him in 5 years. He had fallen in with a bad crowd after our parents died, and I thought he had gone out to California. But there he was, holding a gun and stealing money." Nathan pulled up a chair and sat down across from her, listening. "When they ran out of the bank, Thomas shoved a bag into my hands. He told me to hold it, that he would come back for it. Then the shooting started. The sheriff and his deputies opened fire, and all 3 robbers were killed in the street, including Thomas." Her voice broke slightly. "I was standing there holding a bag full of stolen money, and everyone saw Thomas hand it to me. They assumed I was part of the robbery, that I had been waiting outside to take the money. But you were not." "No." I tried to explain, but the sheriff did not believe me. He said Thomas and I had planned it together. They were going to hang me." She looked up at him, and her eyes were bright with unshed tears. "So I ran. I took the money and I ran, because I knew I would never get a fair trial. They had already decided I was guilty." Nathan absorbed this, turning it over in his mind. "Did you spend any of the money?" "No. I buried it outside of town before I left Missouri. I have been moving west ever since, taking odd jobs, using different names. When I saw your advertisement for a mail-order bride, I thought maybe I could start over somewhere no one would think to look for me. I should have known better." "How did they find you?" "Someone in Prescott recognized me from a wanted poster. I barely made it onto that stagecoach." She stood up and paced to the window again. "You should turn me in. You will get $500, and I will face whatever is coming to me. I am tired of running." Nathan stood as well, moving to stand beside her at the window. Outside, The late afternoon sun painted the desert in shades of gold and orange. His ranch stretched out before them, thousands of acres of hard-won land that his father had built from nothing. He had always prided himself on being an honest man, on following the law and doing what was right. But looking at this woman, this complicated, desperate, beautiful woman who had come to him seeking safety and a new life, he found his convictions wavering. "Your wanted poster says alive," he repeated. "I want you that way." She turned to look at him, confusion crossing her face. "What? Alive? I want you alive, not handed over to bounty hunters who might decide the reward is not worth the trouble of bringing you in breathing. I want you here alive so we can figure this out properly. Why would you help me? You do not even know me." "No, but I know bounty hunters, and I know railroad justice. You said your brother gave you that money right before he died. You said you did not spend it. That tells me something about your character." He picked up the wanted poster and studied it again. "Besides, we exchanged letters for months. Maybe you left out some details, but the woman who wrote those letters is not a criminal. She is someone who wanted a quiet life and a place to belong." "I lied to you. You were trying to survive." He set the poster down. "I am not saying what you did was right, but I understand why you did it." Sarah, or Scarlett, or whatever her real name was, looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "So what do you suggest we do?" "First, we actually get married. If you are my legal wife, it will be harder for them to take you. Not impossible, but harder. You want to marry me today?" "Unless you have a better plan," she laughed, but it was a desperate, almost hysterical sound. "This is insane." "Welcome to the Arizona Territory." He offered her a slight smile. "It is not exactly what either of us planned, but we can make this work. I need a wife. You need protection. And maybe, while we are figuring out how to be married, we can also figure out how to clear your name." "How would we do that? That money you buried. Where exactly did you leave it?" "Outside Harmony, Missouri, about 2 miles east of town, near an old oak tree by a creek. If we could get that money back to the bank, it might go a long way toward proving you were not part of the robbery." "That is halfway across the country, and I am wanted. How would we even attempt something like that?" Nathan ran a hand through his hair, thinking. "We would need help. A lawyer, maybe. Someone who could present the evidence on your behalf. But first things first. We need to make this marriage legal, and we need to do it now before those bounty hunters come back with reinforcements. There is a preacher in Vulture City. There is. Reverend Thomas performs marriages all the time. The town is small, but it has everything we need." She hesitated, and he could see the war playing out across her features. Trust versus suspicion, hope versus resignation. Finally, she nodded. "All right, let us do this before I change my mind or come to my senses." They rode into Vulture City as the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant streaks of red and purple. Nathan kept watch for the bounty hunters, but saw no sign of them. The town was a rough collection of buildings that had sprung up around the Vulture mine, one of the richest gold strikes in the territory. It was not much to look at, but it had a certain frontier charm with its wooden sidewalks and false front buildings. The church was a small adobe structure at the edge of town. Reverend Thomas was a weathered man in his 50s who had seen enough of frontier life to not ask too many questions when Nathan requested an immediate wedding ceremony. They found 2 witnesses in the general store next door, a shopkeeper and his wife who were happy to help for a small fee. The ceremony was brief and practical, nothing like the elaborate wedding Nathan had sometimes imagined when he thought about marrying. Scarlett stood beside him in her dusty traveling dress, and when the Reverend asked if she took Nathan to be her lawfully wedded husband, her voice was steady as she said, "I do." When it came Nathan's turn, he looked into her eyes and meant it when he said the words. Whatever had brought them to this moment, whatever complications lay ahead, he was choosing this, choosing her. "I now pronounce you man and wife. You may kiss your bride." Nathan leaned in and pressed a chaste kiss to her lips, and he felt her tremble slightly. Whether from fear or relief or something else entirely, he could not say. They signed the marriage certificate, and Reverend Thomas recorded it in his book. "Congratulations, Mr. and Mrs. Xavier. May the Lord bless your union." As they walked back to their horses, Scarlett said quietly, "I never thought I would get married like this. On the run to a stranger in a town called Vulture City. Is it the name of the town that bothers you, or the rest of it? All of it? None of it. I do not know any more." She looked up at the darkening sky. "Thank you for doing this. Even if it does not help in the end, thank you for trying." "We will make it work," Nathan said, and he surprised himself by believing it. They rode back to the ranch under a canopy of stars. The Arizona night was cool after the heat of the day, and the desert came alive with sounds of crickets and distant coyotes. Nathan found himself acutely aware of the woman riding beside him, now legally his wife, still very much a stranger despite the months of letters. When they arrived back at the ranch, he showed her to the main bedroom. "You can sleep here. I will take the room down the hall." She looked surprised. "We are married. In name for now, to protect you. I am not expecting anything else." He set her bags down inside the room. "When you are ready, if you are ever ready, that will be different. But there is no pressure." Something in her expression softened. "You are not what I expected, neither are you, but maybe that is not such a bad thing." He left her to settle in and walked back out to the porch, needing air and space to think. What had he just done? Married a woman he barely knew, a woman wanted by the law, tied his fate to hers in a way that could destroy everything he had built. His ranch hands would arrive tomorrow morning and find him with a wife, and he would have to explain without explaining too much. But when he thought about those bounty hunters, about the casual way they had discussed bringing her in, about the wanted poster that specified alive as if that were notable, he felt his decision solidify. There was something wrong about the whole situation, something that did not add up. And he was going to figure out what it was. The next morning, Nathan woke early as always and went out to meet his ranch hands. He had 3 men who worked the property full-time. Diego Martinez, a vaquero from Sonora who had been with Nathan's father for 20 years. Paul Henderson, a former cavalry soldier who knew cattle and horses better than most. And young Jimmy Reed, barely 20 years old but a hard worker. They gathered by the barn as the sun rose, and Nathan broke the news as simply as he could. "My mail-order bride arrived yesterday. We got married last night. Her name is Scarlett Xavier now, and she is mistress of this house. You will treat her with respect." Diego raised an eyebrow but nodded. "Congratulations, boss. It is about time you settled down." "Happened kind of fast," Paul observed, his eyes sharp. "Sometimes things do out here." Nathan met his gaze steadily. "There may be some men coming around asking questions, bounty hunters. They are looking for a woman, but they have the wrong person. If anyone asks, my wife has been here for weeks, came in on an earlier stage." "Understood." The 3 men exchanged glances. Jimmy spoke up first, his young face earnest. "We have got your back, Mr. Xavier." "Always have," Diego agreed. Paul was slower to respond, but finally he nodded. "Your business is your business, but if there is trouble coming, we ought to know about it." "There might be. I will handle it. You men just keep working the ranch like always." He left them to their morning tasks and returned to the house to find Scarlett in the kitchen. She had changed into a simpler dress of blue calico and had her hair pulled back in a practical bun. She looked younger in the morning light, and he found himself wondering exactly how old she was. "I hope you do not mind," she said, gesturing at the stove. "I made coffee and biscuits. It felt strange to be in your kitchen, but I thought I should make myself useful." "Our kitchen," he corrected. "And thank you. I usually just have whatever the hands cook up, which is not much." They sat at the kitchen table together, and the domesticity of the moment struck Nathan as surreal. Yesterday, he had been a bachelor rancher. Today, he was having breakfast with his wife, who was wanted by the law. "I told my men that you have been here for weeks," he said. "If anyone asks, that is the story. You came in on an earlier stage and we have been married a while. Will they lie for me? They are loyal to me and I trust them, but we need to be careful. Those bounty hunters are not going to give up easily." As if summoned by his words, the sound of hoofbeats carried across the morning air. Nathan stood and moved to the window. 4 riders this time, including the 3 from yesterday and a new man wearing a marshal's badge. "Stay inside," Nathan instructed, and walked out to meet them. The marshal was a lean man with gray hair and a stern expression. He dismounted and approached the porch with an official air. "Nathan Xavier." "That is right. I am Marshal William Grant out of Prescott. These men tell me you might have information about a fugitive we are tracking." "They asked me yesterday. I told them I have not seen anyone matching their description. They also tell me a woman arrived here yesterday on a stagecoach. Your mail-order bride, you claimed." "That is correct. My wife, Scarlett Xavier. We were married last night in Vulture City." "Would you like to see the marriage certificate?" The marshal's eyes narrowed. "That is convenient timing." "I do not know what you mean. I sent for a bride months ago. We have been corresponding by letter. She arrived, we got married as planned. What is convenient about that?" One of the bounty hunters, the bearded leader, spoke up. "She matches the description of the woman we are after." "Lots of women match descriptions," Nathan said mildly. "My wife is from Missouri, but she has been traveling for months. Came through Texas and New Mexico before arriving here. She was in El Paso 6 weeks ago, then Santa Fe. I have letters documenting her journey." He did not, of course, but he figured they did not know that. Marshal Grant studied him for a long moment. "I would like to speak with your wife. Is she under arrest?" "Not at this time." "But if she is who these men say she is, she will be." Nathan considered his options. He could refuse, but that would only make them more suspicious. Better to let Scarlett face them and stick to their story. "All right, wait here." He went back inside to find Scarlett standing pressed against the wall by the door, her face white. "I heard. Nathan, I cannot do this." "Yes, you can. You are Scarlett Xavier, my wife. You have been traveling west for months. You were never in Harmony, Missouri during that robbery. You were already gone by then. Whatever they think they know, you deny it. Understand?" She took a shaky breath. "What if they have proof? Then we will deal with it. But right now they just have suspicions. Do not give them anything else." He took her hand and she gripped his fingers tightly. Together they walked out onto the porch. Marshal Grant looked Scarlett over carefully. "Madam, these men believe you are a fugitive named Sarah Grayson, wanted for robbery in Missouri. Are you that woman?" Scarlett lifted her chin, and Nathan saw the schoolteacher she had once been emerge. Her voice was calm and clear. "No, sir. I am Scarlett Xavier, recently married to Nathan. I am from Missouri originally, but I have been traveling west for several months. I was not in Harmony during any robbery." "Where were you?" "I was working in St. Louis as a seamstress. I left there last October and traveled south through Arkansas, then west through Indian Territory and Texas. I have been on the road since then, working odd jobs and making my way here. Can anyone verify that?" "I am sure the people I worked for could if you rode all the way back east to ask them." The bearded bounty hunter pulled out the wanted poster. "You look exactly like this sketch." Scarlett barely glanced at it. "It is a sketch. I imagine it looks like a lot of women." "The wanted woman has a scar," Marshal Grant said suddenly, "on her left arm about 3 inches long, from a childhood accident." Nathan felt Scarlett's hand tighten in his. This was something they had not prepared for, a detail that could condemn her. "Let me see your left arm, madam." Scarlett looked at Nathan and he gave the slightest nod. Slowly, she rolled up her sleeve. There, on her left forearm, was a thin, white scar about 3 inches long. The bounty hunters erupted in victorious shouts, but Marshal Grant held up a hand. "That does not prove anything. Lots of people have scars." "It is her," the bearded man insisted. "Same face, same scar, that is $500 right there." "It is not your decision," the marshal said sharply. He turned back to Scarlett. "How did you get that scar?" Nathan could see her mind racing, could almost hear her calculating the truth versus a lie. Finally, she said, "I fell through a window when I was 7 years old. Glass cut my arm." "The wanted poster says the fugitive got her scar the same way." "I would imagine falling through glass is a fairly common way to get cut," Scarlett said, but her voice wavered slightly. Marshal Grant sighed. "Madam, I am going to be straight with you. You match the description very closely, too closely for comfort. But I have no concrete proof you are the woman I am looking for, and Mr. Xavier here says you are his legal wife. Unless these bounty hunters can provide more evidence than a sketch and a common injury, I cannot arrest you." "This is ridiculous," the bearded man protested. "We tracked her here." "You tracked a woman to this ranch. That does not mean she is the right woman." Grant turned to Nathan. "However, I will be watching. If I find out you are harboring a fugitive, I will arrest you both." "Understood, understood," Nathan said. The marshal mounted his horse. "We will be in Vulture City for a few days. If you think of anything you want to tell me, I will be at the marshal's office there." They rode off, and Nathan waited until they were out of sight before letting out a breath he had not realized he was holding. Scarlett sagged against him and he wrapped an arm around her waist to steady her. "That was too close," she whispered. "You did well, but he is right. They will be watching. What do we do now?" Nathan looked out at his ranch, at the life he had built here, and made a decision that would change everything. "We go to Missouri. We get that money and we clear your name." "Are you insane? I cannot go back there." "You cannot stay here wondering when they will come back with enough evidence to hang you." He turned her to face him. "Look, I know this is not what you signed up for. It is not what I signed up for either, but we are in this together now for better or worse. And I meant those vows we took, even if the circumstances were unusual. Nathan, you have a ranch to run. You cannot just leave. Diego can manage things for a few months. I trust him with my life, and this is more important." "Why?" she asked, searching his face. "Why are you doing this?" "You do not owe me anything." He thought about how to answer that, about all the reasons logical and illogical. "Because your wanted poster says alive, and I want you that way. Alive and free, not constantly looking over your shoulder. You deserve better than that." Tears welled in her eyes. "I do not understand you. You do not have to, you just have to trust me." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, we will go to Missouri. But if this goes wrong, if they catch us, you have to let me take the blame. You have to protect yourself." "We will protect each other," Nathan said, and he meant it. They spent the next 3 days preparing for the journey. Nathan met with Diego and explained that he would be gone for several months on urgent business. The vaquero did not ask questions, simply nodded and promised to keep the ranch running smoothly. Nathan sold some cattle to raise travel money and made arrangements for correspondence to be sent to various towns along their route. Scarlett proved to be more resourceful than he had expected. She dyed her hair darker using walnut husks and changed her manner of dressing. adopting a more severe style that altered her appearance subtly but effectively. She practiced walking differently, holding herself with less confidence, making herself smaller and more forgettable. "Where did you learn to do all this?" Nathan asked, watching her transformation. "When you are on the run, you learn quickly." She caught his expression in the mirror and turned to face him. "I know this is not the quiet school teacher you thought you were getting." "No, you are much more interesting." That pulled a genuine smile from her, the first he had seen since she arrived. It transformed her face, and he felt something shift in his chest. They left before dawn on the fourth day, riding out quietly with 2 horses and pack animals. Nathan left a note for his men saying he had business in Texas and would return before autumn. It was not entirely a lie. The journey east was long and hard. They traveled through New Mexico territory, avoiding main roads where they could, camping under the stars when there were no towns nearby. Nathan found himself learning the rhythms of his new wife, the way she moved and thought and adapted to circumstances. She was tougher than she looked, never complaining about the heat or the long days in the saddle. She could shoot surprisingly well, and when they needed food, she proved skilled at hunting small game. At night, they would sit by the fire and talk, slowly peeling back layers of strangeness between them. "Tell me about your brother," Nathan said one evening as they camped in the foothills of the Sacramento Mountains. Scarlett poked at the fire with a stick, her expression distant. "Thomas was 5 years older than me. When our parents died of fever, I was 14 and he was 19. He tried to take care of both of us, but he fell in with the wrong crowd. Men who saw an angry young man and pointed him toward crime instead of honest work. You loved him, of course. He was my brother, but I also knew what he was becoming, and it broke my heart." She looked up at Nathan. "When I saw him in that bank, part of me was not even surprised, just sad. And then watching him die in the street, knowing his last act was to frame me whether he meant to or not." She shook her head. "I have been angry at him, angry at myself for running instead of staying to fight. Angry at everyone." "Anger is easier than grief," Nathan observed. "Is that the voice of experience? My mother died when I was 15. Cancer. My father threw himself into building the ranch, worked himself to death within 10 years. I was angry at both of them for leaving me alone." He met her eyes across the fire. "But eventually you have to let it go or it poisons everything." "Is that what you did?" "Let it go. I am working on it." They were quiet for a moment, and then Scarlett asked, "What made you send for a mail-order bride?" "A man like you, with a successful ranch, you could have your pick of local women." Nathan smiled slightly. "There are not that many women in Vulture City, and the ones who are there are either married, not interested, or looking for a quick way to get their hands on a profitable ranch. I wanted someone who chose me for me, not for what I own. But you do not know me at all. I know you better now than I did 4 days ago, and I like what I am learning." She looked away, but he could see the hint of a smile on her lips. As they traveled through Texas, staying in small towns and avoiding anywhere too populated, Nathan found himself drawn to Scarlett in ways that surprised him. It was not just her beauty, though she was beautiful. It was her courage, her quick mind, the way she refused to be defeated by circumstances that would have destroyed a lesser person. One night in a small town called Fort Davis, they shared a hotel room to save money and avoid suspicion. There was only one bed, and they lay on opposite sides fully clothed, a careful distance between them. "Nathan," her voice was soft in the darkness. "Yes." "Why did you really agree to help me? The truth." He thought about lying, about giving her some noble reason about justice or morality. But they had been through too much for dishonesty now. "When I saw your wanted poster, when I read that it said alive, something clicked in my mind. I thought about all the ways this could have gone. Those bounty hunters could have just shot you and claimed you resisted. The marshal could have arrested you without evidence and let a judge sort it out later. But they did not, because someone somewhere cares about procedure, about bringing you in the right way. He shifted to face her in the darkness. And I thought about the woman who wrote me letters about books and teaching and wanting a quiet life. I could not reconcile that woman with a bank robber, so I took a chance. What if you are wrong? What if I am exactly what they think I am? Then I am a fool, but I do not think I am wrong. He heard her breath catch and then felt her move closer. Her hand found his in the darkness and their fingers intertwined. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered. "Thank you for trusting me." They fell asleep that way, hands linked, and when Nathan woke in the morning, she was pressed against his side, her head on his shoulder. He lay still, not wanting to wake her, and realized that somewhere in the past 2 weeks, everything had changed. This was not just about helping a stranger anymore. He was falling in love with his accidental wife. The realization should have terrified him, but instead it felt right, like a piece of his life clicking into place that he had not known was missing. They crossed into Louisiana as summer heat settled over the land like a suffocating blanket. The landscape changed from desert to pine forests and swamps. They sold their horses in Shreveport and took a riverboat up the Mississippi, then transferred to a smaller vessel that took them up the Missouri River. As they got closer to Harmony, Scarlett grew quieter and more tense. Nathan did not push her, just stayed close and watchful. They needed a plan for retrieving the money and presenting it as evidence, and neither of them had fully figured that out yet. In St. Louis, Nathan sought out a lawyer recommended by the riverboat captain. His name was Edmund Perry, and he specialized in criminal defense. Nathan explained the situation carefully, watching the man's face for signs of judgment or skepticism. Perry listened without interrupting, then leaned back in his chair. "This is highly irregular, I know. If what your wife says is true and the money is still buried where she left it, returning it could help her case significantly. But it could also be seen as evidence of her guilt. What would you advise?" Perry thought for a moment. "We need to approach the bank directly, with me present as her legal counsel. We explained that Mrs. Xavier was given the money under duress by her dying brother, that she panicked and fled, but that she has now decided to do the right thing and return it. We argue that her actions of preserving and returning the money demonstrate she was never part of the robbery. Will that work? Honestly, I do not know, but it is better than her being arrested and hanged without a chance to present her side." Scarlett, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "What if they just arrest me the moment we walk in?" "That is possible," Perry admitted. "But if we do this correctly, with proper legal procedures, we can at least ensure you get a fair trial. And Mr. Xavier's testimony about how you came to him, the fact that you married him and made a life, that you voluntarily returned to clear your name, that all speaks to your character. So we dig up the money and walk into the lion's den," Scarlett said. "Essentially, yes." She looked at Nathan. "You do not have to come with me for this part. You have done enough. I am your husband. Where else would I be?" Perry cleared his throat. "Actually, Mr. Xavier's presence will help. A respectable rancher vouching for his wife carries weight. But I should warn you both, this could go very wrong very quickly." "Understood," Nathan said. "When do we leave for Harmony?" "Tomorrow, if you are ready. The sooner we handle this, the better." They spent that night in a St. Louis hotel, their finest accommodation since leaving Arizona. Scarlett stood at the window looking out at the city, and Nathan came up behind her, resting his hands on her shoulders. "Are you frightened?" he asked. "Terrified, but also relieved. I have been running for so long, Nathan." Even these past weeks with you, as wonderful as they have been, I have still been looking over my shoulder." She turned to face him. "Whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know that meeting you was the best thing to come out of all of this. You gave me hope when I had none." Nathan cupped her face in his hands. "We are going to get through this, I promise you. You cannot promise that. Watch me." He kissed her then, properly. Not the chaste brush of lips at their wedding, but a real kiss, full of all the feelings he had been building for her over miles and days and campfire conversations. She kissed him back with equal fervor, her hands fisting in his shirt, and when they finally broke apart they were both breathing hard. "I love you," he said, the words escaping before he could think better of them. "I know it is fast and probably foolish, but I love you, Scarlett." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "I love you too. I think I started falling for you when you looked at that wanted poster and decided to lie to those bounty hunters for me." They held each other for a long time, and Nathan sent up a silent prayer that tomorrow would not take her from him. The next morning, they took a train to Harmony with Edmund Perry. The town was smaller than Nathan expected, just a cluster of buildings around a main street with fields and farms stretching in every direction. It was the kind of place where everyone knew everyone, and strangers were noticed immediately. They registered at the hotel under false names and waited until dark. Then, with Perry keeping watch, Nathan and Scarlett rode out to the spot she had described. 2 miles east of town, near an old oak tree by a creek. The tree was exactly where she said it would be, massive and ancient, its branches reaching toward the stars. Scarlett dismounted and walked to a spot near the roots, counting off paces from memory. "Here." Nathan dug while she held the lantern. About 3 feet down, his shovel hit something solid. Together, they uncovered a canvas sack wrapped in oilcloth. Inside were stacks of bills, still dry and intact. $5,000, Scarlett said quietly. "That is what they said was taken. I never even counted it. Let me carry it." Nathan rewrapped the money and secured it to his saddle. They filled in the hole and rode back to town, arriving at the hotel just before midnight. Perry was waiting. "You found it?" "We did." "Then we go to the bank first thing in the morning, get some rest. Tomorrow will be difficult." But Nathan could not sleep. He lay in bed next to Scarlett, listening to her breathe, trying not to think about all the ways this could end badly. What if they arrested her on sight? What if the bank refused to believe her story? What if a mob decided to take justice into their own hands? He must have dozed eventually, because he woke to sunlight streaming through the window and Scarlett already dressed in her best traveling outfit. She looked pale but determined. "Ready?" he asked. "No, but let us do this anyway." They met Perry downstairs, and together the 3 of them walked to the bank. It was a modest brick building on the main street, and Nathan noticed several people stopping to stare as they approached. Word had already spread that strangers were in town. Inside, Perry asked to speak with the bank manager. A nervous clerk disappeared into a back office and returned with a middle-aged man in a suit who introduced himself as Mr. Charles Palmer. "How can I help you?" Palmer asked, his eyes flicking between the 3 of them suspiciously. Perry handed him his card. "I am Edmund Perry, attorney at law from St. Louis. This is Mr. and Mrs. Nathan Xavier, and we are here on a matter related to the robbery that occurred at this bank last year." Palmer's face went pale. "I see. Perhaps we should speak in my office." They followed him into a private room and Palmer closed the door. "What is this about?" Perry gestured to Scarlett. "Mrs. Xavier was present during the robbery. One of the robbers, Thomas Grayson, was her brother. As he fled, he gave her a bag containing the stolen money. She fled in a panic, fearing she would be blamed for the crime." "She was blamed," Palmer said sharply. "Sarah Grayson is wanted for robbery. There is a warrant for her arrest. My client's name is Scarlett Xavier, and she has come to return the money and clear her name." Perry nodded to Nathan, who placed the canvas sack on Palmer's desk. The bank manager opened it with shaking hands. His eyes widened as he saw the contents. "This is the money, all of it. Mrs. Xavier never spent a single dollar. She buried it for safekeeping and has now brought it back at considerable personal risk because it is the right thing to do." Palmer looked at Scarlett, really looked at her for the first time. "You are Thomas Grayson's sister." "I am. He is dead." "I remember you. You used to teach at the school." "Yes, sir." "Why did you run?" Scarlett took a deep breath. "Because I was holding stolen money when my brother and his accomplices were shot dead. Because Sheriff Morrison said I was part of the robbery and was going to arrest me. I was terrified and I ran, and I have been running ever since. But I never spent the money, and I never stopped feeling guilty for not staying to explain. So I have come back. I am prepared to face whatever consequences there are, but I want people to know the truth. I was not part of that robbery. My brother gave me that bag seconds before he died. That is all." Palmer sank into his chair. "Sheriff Morrison was killed 6 months ago in a shootout with some drifters. The new sheriff is a man named Daniel Wright." "Does he know about the robbery?" Perry asked. "Of course. It is one of the unsolved cases he inherited." "Then we should speak with him. Mrs. Xavier is prepared to give a full statement." Palmer nodded slowly. "I will come with you. This money, if it is truly all here, that changes things considerably." They walked together to the sheriff's office, collecting a crowd of curious onlookers along the way. Word spread fast in a small town, and by the time they arrived, half of Harmony seemed to know something important was happening. Sheriff Wright was a young man, probably not much older than Nathan, with an honest face and sharp eyes. He listened to their story with increasing interest, occasionally asking questions to clarify details. When they finished, he sat back in his chair. "So you are saying Thomas Grayson's sister, who we have been looking for all this time, has returned with the stolen money and wants to clear her name?" "That is correct," Perry said. "My client fled out of fear and confusion, not guilt. The fact that she preserved the money and has now returned, it demonstrates her innocence. Or demonstrates that she realized holding onto stolen money was too dangerous," Wright countered. But his tone was not hostile, merely cautious. "Sheriff, I taught children in this town for 3 years," Scarlett said. "Did anyone in all that time have reason to think I was a criminal?" Wright shook his head slowly. "No, madam, I asked around when I took this job. Everyone said you were a good teacher, kind, honest. Then why would I suddenly decide to rob a bank with my brother, who I had not seen in 5 years? You tell me." "I would not. I did not. He put me in an impossible situation and I reacted poorly, but I am here now trying to make it right." Wright looked at Palmer. "Is all the money there?" "I will need to count it properly, but it appears to be." The sheriff drummed his fingers on his desk, thinking. Finally, he said, "Here is what I am prepared to do. Mrs. Xavier, you will remain in Harmony while I investigate this matter further. I want to speak with anyone who was in the bank that day, review the previous sheriff's notes, and verify Mr. Palmer's count of the money. If everything checks out, and if I believe your story, I will recommend to the territorial prosecutor that the charges be dropped." "And if you do not believe her story," Nathan asked, "then she will be arrested and tried." Wright's gaze was steady, "But I am inclined to believe her. Criminals do not usually return stolen money voluntarily." Perry stood. "That is acceptable. We will be staying at the hotel. You can find us there when you need us." They returned to the hotel, and Nathan could feel the weight of eyes on them from every direction. The whole town knew now. They were living in a fishbowl, their every move watched and discussed. Over the next 3 days, Sheriff Wright conducted his investigation. He interviewed everyone who had been in the bank during the robbery. He reviewed witness statements that described Thomas Grayson shoving something at a woman who matched Scarlett's description moments before he died. He counted the money with Palmer and confirmed it was all there, down to the last dollar. On the fourth day, he came to the hotel with news. "Mrs. Xavier, I have completed my investigation. I have reviewed all available evidence and spoken with everyone involved. Based on what I have learned, I believe your account of what happened. You were an innocent bystander caught up in your brother's crime." Scarlett gripped Nathan's hand so hard he felt his bones creak. "Does that mean the charges are dropped?" "I have sent a recommendation to the territorial prosecutor that all charges be dismissed. Given that the money has been returned and there is no evidence you were part of the planning or execution of the robbery, I expect he will agree. However, it will take some time to make it official." "How long?" Perry asked. "A few weeks possibly. But in the meantime, Mrs. Xavier is free to go. I am not holding her." "Thank you, Sheriff," Scarlett said, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for coming back. It took courage." Wright tipped his hat. "I hope you can rebuild your life now, madam. You deserve that chance." After he left, Scarlett broke down crying and Nathan held her as years of fear and stress poured out. They had done it. Against all odds, they had actually done it. They stayed in harmony for another week, waiting for the official word from the prosecutor. During that time, several of Scarlett's former students and their parents came to visit her, expressing relief that she had been cleared. The town that had once turned on her was now welcoming her back, and Nathan could see the healing it brought her. When the letter arrived confirming that all charges had been dropped, they celebrated quietly in their hotel room. Perry returned to St. Louis, his work complete, and Nathan and Scarlett were finally, truly free. "What do you want to do now?" Nathan asked. "We could stay here if you want, start over in a place where you have history." Scarlett shook her head. "No, this was my past, but Arizona is my future. I want to go home to Vulture City. I want to see your ranch, really see it, not just as a place to hide, but as our home." "Our home," Nathan repeated, liking the sound of that. "Then let us go home." The journey back west was completely different from the journey east. There was no need to hide now, no constant watching over shoulders. They traveled at a leisurely pace, stopping in towns to rest properly, sleeping in real beds more often than under the stars. "Somewhere in Texas," Scarlett asked. "When did you know you loved me? Really know it?" Nathan thought back over all their time together. "Remember that night in Fort Davis in the hotel, when you asked me why I was helping you, and we fell asleep holding hands?" "Yes. I woke up before you did, and you had moved in your sleep. Your head was on my shoulder, and you looked so peaceful. And I remember thinking that I wanted to wake up like that every morning for the rest of my life. That was when I knew," she smiled. "For me, it was earlier, when you stood up to those bounty hunters on your porch. You had every reason to turn me in, and instead you lied to protect me. I think I started falling in love with you in that moment. So we have been in love almost since we met. Apparently so. We are terribly impractical people. The best people usually are." They arrived back at the ranch in early September, as the brutal Arizona summer was finally starting to ease. Diego and the other hands greeted them with relief, and Nathan could see the questions in their eyes about what had happened. He gathered them all that evening and explained everything, figuring they deserved the truth. When he finished, Diego just nodded and said, "The boss found himself a woman with courage. That is good. A ranch like this needs a strong mistress." Over the following weeks, Scarlett settled into her role as Nathan's wife and the lady of the ranch. She was fascinated by every aspect of the operation and insisted on learning how things worked. She could not rope cattle, but she could ride fence lines and spot problems. She could not break horses, but she could manage the books and handle correspondence with buyers. She also started a small school on the ranch, teaching the children of the hands to read and write. It was something she had missed. She told Nathan, and watching her with the children, he could see how much she came alive when teaching. Their life together developed a comfortable rhythm. They woke early, worked hard during the day, and spent evenings on the porch watching the sunset paint the desert in brilliant colors. They talked about everything and nothing, learning each other's rhythms and quirks, building a partnership that went deeper than either had expected. One night in October, as they lay in bed together, Scarlett said, "I think I am with child." Nathan sat up so fast he nearly fell out of bed. "What? I am fairly certain. All the signs are there." "When?" "I would guess sometime in late spring. May, perhaps, or early June." He pulled her into his arms, overwhelmed with joy. "We are going to have a baby." "You are pleased?" "Pleased, Scarlett. I am thrilled. Terrified, but thrilled." She laughed against his chest. "Me too." Their son was born in May of 1884, a healthy boy with dark hair and his mother's green eyes. They named him Thomas, after Scarlett's brother, because she said everyone deserved to be remembered for more than their worst moments. 2 years later, a daughter followed, whom they named Grace. And 2 years after that, another boy they called Samuel. The ranch prospered under their joint management. Nathan expanded the cattle operation and started breeding horses as well. Scarlett's school grew, attracting not just ranch children but kids from Vulture City and the surrounding area. She became a respected figure in the community, known for her intelligence and kindness. Sometimes, lying in bed at night with his wife asleep beside him and his children safe in their rooms, Nathan would think back to that dusty afternoon, when a stagecoach had brought trouble and transformation to his doorstep. He had taken a chance on a woman whose wanted poster specified alive, and in wanting her that way, he had found everything he never knew he needed. One evening, when Thomas was 10, Grace was 8, and Samuel was 6, the children begged their parents to tell them the story of how they met. Nathan and Scarlett exchanged glances, and she smiled. "It is quite a tale." "Then tell us," Grace insisted, so they did, editing out some of the scarier parts but keeping the essence of the truth. They told their children about letters and mail-order brides, about wanted posters and bounty hunters, about a long journey east and the courage to face the past. "So Mama was an outlaw?" Thomas asked, his eyes wide. "Mama was accused of being an outlaw," Scarlett corrected. "There is a difference." "I was innocent, but I had to prove it." "And Papa helped you," Samuel said. "Yes, Papa helped me. He believed in me when he had no reason to." "I had reasons," Nathan countered. "Your mother is the strongest, bravest, most honest person I have ever known. That was clear from the start." "Even when she was lying about who she was?" Grace asked, with the devastating logic of an 8-year-old. "Even then. Sometimes people have to protect themselves before they can be fully honest. Your mother did what she had to do to survive." The children seemed satisfied with this, and eventually they went off to bed. Nathan and Scarlett sat on the porch in the gathering darkness, holding hands the way they had that first night in Fort Davis all those years ago. "You ever regret it?" Scarlett asked. "Taking a chance on me?" "Never. Not for a single moment. Even when those bounty hunters showed up, even when we had to cross half the country, especially then. Those were the experiences that showed me who you really are and who I could be with you." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I came here expecting a simple life. A quiet marriage of convenience to a rancher I would learn to tolerate. Sorry I could not provide that. Do not be. What we have is so much better than simple or quiet. It is extraordinary." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of sage and sunlight that always clung to her hair. "It is extraordinary. You are extraordinary. We are extraordinary together." The years continued to pass in the way they do, marked by seasons and harvests, by children growing and the ranch expanding. Nathan's dark hair went gray at the temples, and Scarlett developed fine lines around her eyes from squinting at the Arizona sun. But their love never diminished. If anything, it grew stronger, deepened by shared experiences and mutual respect. When Thomas was 18, he took over much of the ranch management, showing a natural talent for cattle that made Nathan proud. Grace became a teacher like her mother, though she taught in Vulture City proper rather than on the ranch. Samuel discovered a passion for horses and started a breeding program that became renowned throughout the territory. Nathan and Scarlett found themselves with more time together, and they spent it much as they had in the beginning, talking, laughing, simply being in each other's presence. They took long rides through the desert, remembering the journey that had brought them together. They sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the spectacular Arizona sunsets, and sometimes Scarlett would pull out the old wanted poster that Nathan had kept all these years. "Your wanted poster says alive," he would say, as he had that very first day. "And you wanted me that way," she would reply, the ritual comforting in its familiarity. In 1903, when Nathan was 50 and Scarlett was 46, they celebrated their 20th anniversary. Their children threw them a party, inviting everyone from Vulture City and the surrounding ranches. Diego was there, impossibly old now but still sharp, raising a glass to toast the couple he had watched build a life together from the most unlikely beginning. As Nathan looked around at the gathering, at the life he and Scarlett had created, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. This woman, this extraordinary woman who had come to him fleeing her past, had given him everything worth having: love, family, purpose, joy. That night, after the guests had left and the house was quiet, they stood together on the porch one last time. The desert night was cool and clear, stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. "I love you," Nathan said, as he had said countless times over the years. "I love you too," Scarlett replied, as she always did. "Thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me." They stood in comfortable silence, and Nathan thought about how strange and wonderful life could be. How a dusty wanted poster and a desperate gamble had led to this moment, this life, this love that had outlasted every obstacle placed in its path. He had wanted her alive, and she had given him everything. Years later, when Nathan was 73 and Scarlett was 69, they sat together on that same porch in the early evening. The ranch was now run entirely by their children and grandchildren, a thriving operation that had become one of the most successful in Arizona, which had become a state just a few years prior. Nathan's hair was white now, and his joints ached more than they used to. Scarlett moved a bit slower and her eyes were not as sharp, but when they looked at each other, they saw not the toll of age but the accumulation of a life well lived together. Their grandson, another Thomas, came running up to the porch with something in his hand. "Grandpa, Grandma, I found this in the attic." He held up a yellowed, folded paper. Nathan felt his heart skip. He knew exactly what it was. Young Thomas unfolded it carefully. "It is a wanted poster for someone named Sarah Grayson, but the picture looks like you, Grandma," Scarlett smiled gently. "That is because it is me, sweetness. Or rather, it was me a very long time ago. You were wanted by the law." The boy's eyes were huge. "It is a long story, but yes, I was. Falsely, but I was wanted nonetheless. That poster brought me to your grandfather." "How?" Nathan reached over and took the poster from his grandson. The paper was fragile now, the ink faded, but he could still make out the words that had changed his life. "Your grandmother needed help, and I gave it to her, and we fell in love. That is the most romantic thing I have ever heard," young Thomas declared with the dramatic enthusiasm of a 12-year-old. "It is pretty romantic," Scarlett agreed, winking at Nathan. After their grandson ran off to share his discovery with his siblings, Nathan carefully refolded the poster. "Should we throw this away finally?" "Never," Scarlett said firmly. "That poster is part of our story, our children's story. It is a reminder of where we came from and how far we have traveled, together, always together." As the sun set over the desert, painting the sky in the brilliant reds and golds they had watched for 40 years, Nathan took his wife's hand. They had faced down bounty hunters and marshals, crossed a continent, cleared her name, built a ranch, raised a family, and grown old side by side. He had seen a wanted poster that said alive, and he had wanted her that way. And she had given him a lifetime of love, laughter, challenge, and joy. She had been his mail-order bride and so much more than he had ever dreamed of finding. "What are you thinking about?" Scarlett asked, sensing his reflective mood. "I am thinking about that stagecoach coming up the road with a cloud of dust behind it. How nervous I was, meeting you for the first time. I was terrified, certain you would turn me away the moment you saw me. I took one look at you and knew my life was about to change completely. For better or worse, always for better. Every single day for better." She squeezed his hand. "Even the days when I was stubborn, especially those days. Your stubbornness has saved us more times than I can count." They sat in comfortable silence as night fell over their ranch. Inside the house, they could hear their family, children and grandchildren talking and laughing, the sound of dinner being prepared, the ordinary chaos of a large, loving family. This was what that dusty wanted poster had led to. This abundance of life and love. This legacy of courage and second chances. This proof that even the most unlikely beginning could lead to the most extraordinary ending. When they finally went inside for dinner, surrounded by 3 generations of the family they had built together, Nathan looked across the table at Scarlett. She caught his eye and smiled, and in that smile was everything. Their whole history, their deep love, their shared triumph over every obstacle. He had wanted her alive, and she had given him life itself. Not just children and grandchildren, though he treasured them beyond measure. But life in its fullest sense. Purpose and passion, adventure and partnership, the kind of deep, abiding love that poets write about but few people ever find. They lived many more years together, each day a gift they never took for granted. When Nathan finally passed at the age of 81, it was peacefully in his sleep, with Scarlett beside him as she had been for nearly 50 years. His last words to her were the same words he had spoken that very first day. "I want you that way, alive." Scarlett lived another 5 years, surrounded by children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, all of whom knew the story of how their family began. She spent her final years writing down everything she remembered about those wild early days, wanting future generations to understand the courage it took to start over, to trust a stranger, to believe in second chances. When she passed quietly one spring morning, they buried her next to Nathan on a hill overlooking the ranch. The tombstone was simple. Scarlett Xavier, beloved wife, mother, grandmother, wanted alive, lived fully. The ranch continued to thrive under the care of their descendants, and the story of the mail-order bride who was an outlaw and the cowboy who saved her became family legend. The wanted poster was framed and hung in the main house, a reminder of where it all began. And sometimes, on quiet evenings when the desert wind blew just right, the family swore they could feel Nathan and Scarlett there on the porch, still holding hands, still in love. still proving that the most extraordinary love stories begin not with perfection but with courage, trust, and the willingness to say, "I want you alive," and mean it with your whole heart. Their legacy lived on not just in the successful ranch or the numerous descendants, but in the lesson they taught through their lives. That being wanted alive means being seen for who you truly are, mistakes and all, and being loved anyway. It means taking chances on people who seem like long shots. It means believing in redemption and second starts. The story that began with a desperate woman on a stagecoach and a lonely rancher taking an impossible gamble became a story of family, love, and the kind of happily ever after that only happens when two people decide to face everything together, no matter what comes. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Nathan had seen a wanted poster that specified alive. He had wanted Scarlett that way, and she had rewarded his faith with a lifetime of love that echoed through generations. Proof that the best love stories are the ones where two imperfect people refuse to give up on each other, no matter what the world throws at them.